All right, welcome everybody. Hey, Amy, how's it going? Welcome to Yaron and Amy show today. It's Tuesday. I'm tired. I've been traveling all weekend, so I'm trying to recover. And
Where were you?
I was in Austin Saturday,
Okay.
so I'll tell you.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, but I'm back for a little while. I leave again Thursday for Denver, and then I'll be back. I think we're doing a show next week, right?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Good.
Excellent.
All right, so Amy, let's. You did an appearance on Tucker Carlson. I remembered his name. Wow, that's cool. I remembered his name, Tucker Carlson, last night.
Yes.
It was really good. That was good. But what was the topic? And then I'll give you some input on.
I know what I could have done a little better, right? So he had a 15-minute monologue the week before, and and so one of the things that he talked about in there was, in effect, free market capitalism has failed us. There are all these problems in society. There's all these components of happiness that depend on strong, independent families, and the current system is, quote, failing them, et cetera. And
so what did he say? How did capitalism fail us, and what are the problems other than family that capitalism's caused?
So free markets just give us cheap goods, and cheap goods won't make us happy. These were some of the things that he said. He also talked about the fact that currently, politically right now, there is a revolt by the voters because governments have refused to improve their lives.
It's up to governments to do that.
It's up to governments to improve our lives, So there was just, and he went on about foreign policy a lot. He's very, let's get out of the endless wars and stuff like that. But there was so much you could talk about. Immigration, of course, was in there. But the one topic that I pitched to discuss with him was free markets, and how, in my view, Rand's view, free markets are indispensable for human flourishing and happiness. They may not be sufficient, right? The fact that we have a free market system is not going to make every person happy. Or if a lot of people make bad decisions, it's not going to make people happy. But that was what I pitched him. And so what I decided to do was a bit ambitious, which is to talk about the connection between values and choice. And, in particular, not the fact that the production of values depends on free will, but he opened up because he listed a bunch of components to human happiness, relationships, and purpose, and other things, right? And so he opened it up for me to connect choice to purpose in the way that I did there. And so I said, free markets are the thing that uniquely gives you choice, free choice. And what would it be like if the government gave you a list of approved purposes for your life and you had to choose from those? How are you going to be happy if that is your situation? So I think that, judging by the reaction that I got, that point came across. But then, of course, he hits you with a whole lot of other things, right? And so,
he wants to be political. He doesn't want to talk to you philosophical. He wants to go to political. So he says, but Amy, as long as we have a government, the government, it provides incentives to do certain things. We tax certain things. We don't tax other things. We
regulate.
Yeah. And there was one line that you could have had there that would have shut that down. That would have shut that down, I think. I think something like, yes, Tucker, you're right. The government, the way it taxes and the way it regulates today distorts my choices. I would like to see, given that we're going to have taxes, given that unfortunately today there are regulations, I would like to see the government be neutral, that those taxes be neutral and minimize the intervention in my life and the incentive. So for example, a flat tax with no deduction, no exclusion, nothing, so that the government is not trying to tell me, oh, make charitable contributions, oh, have lots of kids because you get a kid thing or whatever, but that a government that does not try to guide me in terms of the choices of my values. Because once it does, when you're in power, the values are yours. When Alexandria Cortez is in power, the values are going to be hers. But you've granted her already That
the
it's okay
power.
for the government to be manipulated. What you want is as neutral as possible. Tax code as neutral as possible.
And I think that sort of thing would have come out if, remember when I asked him, I said, so is your proposal to institute some more government controls to push people towards, right? And he diverted again and said, well, and he didn't tell me what it is exactly that he wants to do. He just said, well, the system right now is failing everybody. It's not making them happy. And so, where do you go from there? In a 5-minute segment, where do you go from there?
Yeah,
It's
and
a little tricky.
I agree with you, Tucker. And the solution is more freedom, not less. And
Right.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
you did great, but ex post, you can always think of.
No, there's different directions it could have gone. At least I made the point that we do not have a free market right now, and that I think that the evils that he's named are due to government intervention.
Yeah, I would have stayed away from voluntary taxation. That's the one thing that I would have.
Yeah. I mean, and so I think
have a command here: never get into voluntary taxation. Talk about lowering, simplifying,
making them neutral.
tax.
I like the neutral idea, or there's a consumption tax proposal, a pure consumption tax proposal I could have gone for.
Well, then you open up to regressive taxes. The simplest one is a flat tax with no, but the thing is to neutralize. And the thing is to say something like, yeah, taxes are theft, the taxes are evil. But since we have taxes and right now we need taxes, this is what we should do. I think.
Okay.
Because once you get into voluntary taxes, then some in the audience are going, okay, so I have a standing order never to go to zero taxes because it's too distracting to the audience.
Although some people really reacted positively to that. And so they said, oh, you mean fee for service government, which is what I proposed. And they were pretty excited about the possibility of that prospect. It's kind of cool for people to, actually think, yeah, well, this is the way that it is, but it could be different. Maybe not now, somewhere in the far future, but it could be. But yeah, I think you're right. In the short segment like that, just say, if we're going to have it be neutral and not push towards any particular lifestyle choices.
Job is not to decide or to incentivize it to move us towards particular values. And one example you could give, of course, again, you need a longer segment, but one example you could give is both Democrats and Republicans have always thought for decades and decades and decades that getting people to own their own house is a good thing. And so we've got deductions for interest on a mortgage, and we've got housing policy, and we've got Freddie and Fannie. We still have Freddie and Fannie 10 years after the financial crisis. We haven't gotten rid of Freddie and Fannie. And we have all these other things, and Republicans and Democrats, you, Tucker, you probably love the idea that it's a conservative kind of cornerstone. Everybody should own their own homes. Better people own their own homes. But what do you get as a consequence? You get a financial crisis. You get a complete disaster like financial crisis caused by pro-housing policies that this kind of idea. No. And by the way, Canada has the same rate of home ownership as the United States does, with no subsidies, no controls, no attempt to get people to own a home. So how about the government not tell me if I should own or rent? How about the government not tell me if I should give to charity or not? How about the government not tell me if I should have kids or not? If you believe, Tucker, or anybody, that you know how people should behave, I certainly think I know how people should behave, then that's what the bully pulpit is for. That's what your microphone is for. That's what you can talk, you can argue, you can convince, you can debate. What you don't have a right is to force people to follow your set of values rather than their own. And then they also have to suffer the consequences when they make the mistakes. Right?
Yes, because if you don't let them, I had the people come on and say, well, I have to pay cigarette taxes because if other people choose to, use cigarettes, then they're going to need welfare to
get rid of welfare. But that's right. That's right. It's all one big, one layer demands the next layer demands the next layer. If we have socialized medicine, you have to now control people's obesity. You have to now control people's smoking. You have to control their alcohol consumption. You have to control their lifestyle. How much, they're going to have quotas for how much you exercise and what kind of exercises. And the government will give you an exercise pyramid, and you should only exercise these kinds of exercises. That's how you get socialism. And that's the other thing is Tucker is an advocate for statism, for a form of socialism. All he is setting it up for Alexandria. What's her middle name? I keep forgetting her middle name.
Well, I just think of her as AOC now because it's all over the place. It's just AOC.
Setting it up for AOC to come in and impose her values, which is socialism. But you know, who's to say her values?
And see, this is the thing I was trying to get him to think. You know, even if the values are good, suppose he and I agree that strong independent families are a good thing, and I would say other things being equal, they are. But it's not good if they come about as a result of government force, right?
Ownership is great as long as it does come out.
I mean, what does he want to do? You know, let's say people can't divorce, or you know, what I mean, what are the kind of policies he'd want? But he wouldn't get concrete about them. And you know, if he got concrete about the policies, we could talk all day basically. And I could illustrate with each one. I think two things, because there's a couple points I wanted to make. Was there's no way he's going to stave off socialism by having his brand or flavor of government controls, because any control that you institute is going to bring further controls. Moreover, you know, what I was making as the main point was controls can't make you happy, even if it's nudging you towards something that somebody from the outside, you know, the best psychologist in the world could look and say, okay, you should pursue X career. If it was forced on you, it's not a value.
No accident that founding fathers combined the pursuit of happiness, the right to pursue happiness, with the right to life, which means the right to live free of coercion, right to live free of authority, the right to live free of somebody telling you what your values must be and forcing you to pursue them. The pursuit of happiness is directly, inextricably, is that a word? Inextricably.
Yes, it sure is.
To the idea of freedom, freedom from coercion, freedom from government, freedom from Tucker Carlson with a gun dictating the kind of family I should have and how strong it should be, whatever the hell that means. So, you know, absolutely, it's making that connection to freedom is so crucial. You can't, the founders understood this. You cannot have happiness unless you have freedom, which means the freedom to choose, the freedom to choose your own values and to pursue your own values.
But I mean, how wonderful is it that he has allowed me to come on and discuss with him a fairly serious set of topics. Yeah, albeit in a few minutes at a chunk, right? But I mean, I went on there the very first time talking about whether atheists are more closed-minded than religious people. And, you know, this time I get to actually talk about the connection between values and free markets, and how you can't really achieve happiness unless you have choice, which is something that the market gives you. That's a pretty cool thing that he allowed me to do, given that he disagrees.
No, absolutely. And look, they thrive off of disagreement, but he treats you with respect. And even though I can't stand him and would never watch him, except when you're on, I give him credit for at least being willing to put somebody on that he disagrees with. And I think you do a good job, and they like you because you have a good personality for television, and he doesn't feel threatened by you, I think. Even though you bring up deep philosophical issues, I think he feels it makes him think. It doesn't threaten him in a.
Well, yeah, the whole point is to, you know, continue to have these types of discussions in whatever forum that we can. You know, I always think of Dave Rubin as the archetype of having these respectful intellectual discussions and hopefully addressing important issues. And he and I, even in 3 minutes, had a fairly interesting discussion on the transgender stuff. But you know, you do what you can. And
absolutely. I mean, if I won, I would be yelling at him, and I would be on one show, and he'd kick me off. So I'm glad you're on. Let's see. We got a super chat question, not completely, not really related, but not because they. Why does Germany and Japan produce higher quality products despite their philosophical shortcomings? What is it in their culture that works? Engineering, he asks. So Germany and Japan produce high quality some things, not everything. And Germany and Japan, for the most part, have market economies that compete on a global scale. They have good engineering. They have good educational system that are particularly good at engineering, less at, let's say, innovating new things and completely new stuff, but at engineering solid things. They have very good education programs that produce good engineers. They have a very competitive market. Think of Germany and automobiles. There's BMW, Mercedes, there's Audi, there's Volkswagen, and then they compete with other European companies, and they compete on global markets. It's a very competitive market. There's certain machine tools they're very good at. There's certain agricultural products they're very good at, but they're not very good, for example, at breakthrough innovation. That you have to come to the United States. Almost all breakthrough innovation happens in the US. What you get over there is great engineering, which again, the educational system is geared towards. I think the same is true of Japan. You don't get massive innovation. You get good engineers, but you also have relatively free markets. So those auto companies are all free to compete with one another. And in Japan, all the auto companies are free to compete with one another. So you have the right incentives, the right educational system, smart people with a culture focused on some forms of perfectionism, of getting things right, the German mentality, and I think the Japanese mentality of doing a good job, of being productive, of working hard, but fine-tuning everything. Paying attention to detail, which not every culture has. I think all contribute to their ability to produce that. So, but if they weren't free, you wouldn't get it. If they weren't competing in a global free market, relatively free market, you wouldn't get it. And they still are not very good at the big innovation. Somebody says Germany invented auto about 1885. All right. So the one innovation you can think of was from 40 years ago?
When they were more free, right?
Yeah. I mean, no, I'm not saying Germany doesn't innovate, but if you think about the big technological innovations, they almost all come from the United States, both in healthcare and in technology. So, I mean, I think Tucker's illustrating how frustrating the world is right now, because both left and the right are statists. They're both statists. They both want to fine tune our behavior. They both want to dictate how we should behave, what we should do, how we should do it. They're both, they're both pragmatic. I think the left is, if anything, more idealistic. And I think that's what makes it to young people more appealing. I think what makes the left appealing to young people is its idealism. We'll talk about that when we talk about AOC. AOC is the Objectivist Academic Center. AOC, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. Ocasio, that's why I can't pronounce it. It's Ocasio-Cortez. Anyway, AOC. We'll talk about AOC. But they have the idealism. The right now has lost all idealism. So Tucker he mentions this, used to be libertarian. He never was a libertarian, but he at least had some idealistic view of the marketplace. He had some positive view of markets and a vision, a founding fathers kind of vision for America. No idealism on the right at all anymore. It's pure pragmatism. And a big part of what he was trying to say in your segment yesterday was the way to combat AOC socialism is to propose our own way to help people.
Right. And so then if he had come in and actually kind of followed that train with me when I asked him the question about what do you want to do? Is this your proposal? The controls breed further controls idea. With any proposal that he had given me, I could have talked about, why it won't make people happy, why it's going to create market distortions for which there would be a demand for increasing government regulation, and you'd still be going down that path. And so, the answer obviously is to free things up. And where I would have gone, and this is relevant to a super chat question that you've got here, because someone's asking about compulsory education. And that is one of the things that I would have brought in, that right now with the government control of schools and the progressive education, which you did a whole show with C. Bradley Thompson about, that this is the big cause of many of the things that he talked about, drug abuse and suicide and all sorts of, horribles. And a lot of the bad things in the culture right now are caused, I believe, by progressive education.
Yeah. And of course, he's talking about drug abuse and all these things, bad things in the culture. But what's government's going to do about it? Government's going to teach us that drugs are bad. Government's going to.
Well, yeah, I think right after my segment, he went into legalizing marijuana segment, and he talked about marijuana in that 15-minute monologue as well. So, he thinks legalizing marijuana is so bad. If I had ever gotten with him on that too, I saw a story recently that said, when they legalized marijuana in California, I still haven't gone to get any. I was like, when did they legalize it? I'm sitting back. It's like, this is not a priority for me to even try it. Right. But I haven't gone. It's been legal for quite some time now. And I guess at first there was a big rush and people, oh, wow, this is exciting. Let's go get some or whatever.
It's not like Californians weren't smoking before.
Well, they were, but there were some people who are at least stopped enough by the fact that it's illegal. You know, I mean, really, I think that one of the biggest things that you would think is if it's a black market or it's illegal, you know, how do you trust the source and things like that? Because it's not a stable legal business that you can go write a Yelp review about or something, right? So anyway, I saw some statistics that said that while there was initially, quite a demand, that it had ended up, dropping off considerably after a while. It's like the novelty wears off. And of course, there are a lot of government bureaucrats, politicians who were counting on huge tax revenues because of all this marijuana consumption and everything. And apparently there's just not that much. They're very disappointed that they, go smoke some more.
California's going to have to figure out a different way to balance its budget.
We'll just increase our gas taxes. We've got that weird flexible gas tax that in California, you've escaped this now, you're in Puerto Rico, but in California, the bureaucrats in Sacramento, they can increase and decrease the gas tax depending on how low the actual price of tax is and what they think the market will bear, and before we'll all get mad at them or something. And so there's some bureaucrat who decides how much tax to inflict on us, I don't know, on a weekly basis, a daily basis. I don't know how often they fluctuate this thing.
Tax bureaucrat who just sits there with a little...
how expensive should I make gas for them today?
Rape these people today.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, so all
but
right.
Yeah, so overall, really, I mean, with Checker, the thing I wanted to emphasize was I was trying to emphasize the positive connection between values and free markets, and saying, I mean, this was just a huge glaring gap in his whole monologue. He expects the iPhone to make him happy. The iPhone cannot make you happy. If you have a cheaper iPhone, there are certain things you can do with an iPhone that can make you happy, but it's all about us. It's making the choices to live our lives in a certain way, which you can only do in the context of a free market, but there's no guarantee you will.
But this is why capitalism is not defined purely in economic terms or in any terms. I mean, the whole point of free markets is that the government is there to protect our rights and leave us alone to choose our values. And then it's up to the people in the media, the intellectuals, to help guide the culture in terms of its value. But it's not ever, ever, ever the role of those people with guns to guide those values. It's not the role of government, because the government is force, the government is a gun. And you don't, as you pointed out on the show, government can only reduce our options. It cannot increase them. Government can only destroy choices. It doesn't create choices. So you want to get the government out of the business of making choices. And the problems today, all the problems that he articulated, are problems of, one, government coercion, and two, a true lack of values in the culture that needs to be addressed by intellectuals and philosophers and thinkers, not by government.
And part of it's because of the, kind of relativism that's instilled in progressive education, I think.
That's education. So here's the question from Aviad, who managed to use Super Chat in Israel, in spite of the fact that it's not allowed, by using a VPN. And in other words, YouTube identified him as dialing in from Miami instead of dialing in from Tel Aviv, so you could use Super Chat. That's all right. Good for you, Aviad. Was wondering, where do you stand on the idea of compulsory education? And would you consider parents withholding education for their kids as abusive? So I think it's pretty obvious that both Amy and I are against compulsory education. We're against the government involved in any of these choices. The only job of government is to protect individual rights. Now, the issue of withholding education by parents is a tricky one, but I still don't believe it's abusive. The only job of government is to protect us from force. And withholding education is not force. It's not. So parents who beat their kids up, that's force. Parents who starve their kids, that's force. Parents who don't send their kids to school.
So when I read this question, there's a scenario that I thought of that you could say, okay, maybe it's abusive, and you can tell me what you think, Yaron. Imagine that you sensorially deprived a child so much and just deprive the child of any exposure to the world such that the child could learn at all. Because we have this beautiful mechanism that's going to enable us to learn. But if you could imagine a child that was just locked up and not exposed to anything enough so that the child couldn't even learn.
That would be abusive. But
Yeah.
it would be, but you'd have to be very careful. And I mean, this is
I don't know how you would draw the line. I'm trying to think of
philosophy of law, right? So
Yeah.
you need to carefully draw a line. And this is why, we believe that there should be a government, and the government's job is to draw those lines. And it's hard. And the legislatures should be really, really smart, and they should be thinkers. They should be people who think about these things. Where do you draw a line? What are the consideration? What are the negative effects of drawing it here versus the negative effect? Am I protecting individual rights? Am I sure I'm not violating anybody's rights? I mean, it's tricky questions. And this is why you need philosophers of law to be legislatures. And this is why you need an attitude of objectivity, an objective approach to law in the legislature. And this is what you couldn't have with anarchy, right? You couldn't have with competing legislatures. But, it's really hard. Now you might make mistakes, and you have to be willing to adjust the law based on those mistakes.
Yeah.
So I don't know where the line is. There are a lot of questions where I don't think anybody's thought of where the line is. But that's where we need people like Amy who study the law and study philosophy and kind of come up with, okay, here's the principle. Here's how we apply the principle to this case. Here's where we draw the line, and here are exceptions so that the line is not too thick. Here's some exceptions and how you would get around if the line is applied in an inappropriate way.
Yep. Articulate the principle clearly, and then have a lot of common law type decisions to apply it in context, and have judges who must articulate their reasons for coming out one way or another when they apply that principle, et cetera. And then you'll get some objectivity.
But what you don't want is a government that decides what the right way of raising kids, what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, what's good education, what's bad education, what's not education. You have to rely on the fact that 99.9% of parents want their kids to get education. And in a free market, in the kind of world where free market would exist, the number of parents who would not want their kids to get an education or would deny their kids an education is so minuscule, so irrelevant that I don't think it would come up. Remember, you're not going to get a free market without a deep cultural shift, a real shift in how people think about their own lives, about their children, about taking responsibility for their lives, about taking responsibility for the children, what it means to have children. Why should you have children? One of the reasons we're for abortion is to give people the opportunity not to have children, as many opportunities as possible, not to have children if they don't really, 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 really want them and are willing to do all the things necessary when it comes to having children. So, it's a completely different culture, the culture we're talking about. It's a completely different world. That's why you can't flip a switch tomorrow and have laissez-faire capitalism. It would be a disaster.
Exactly. So should we go on with our theme a little?
Super chats, because there were a lot of them. So let's go quickly. And we can probably hook them into pragmatism, all of them. This one is a challenge. Is consciousness in a robot ever possible? If so, is that sufficient for a robot to have human rights? I mean, my view is it's not possible. And since somebody's claiming it is, they would have to provide some evidence of the positive. But from my perspective, a conscious robot is just an arbitrary statement at this point.
I mean, a robot is a physical cause and effect mechanism that doesn't have free will. And
we don't understand exactly what generates free will. So I would say this: all the knowledge that we have today, put aside even free will, let's just take consciousness, right? A dog has consciousness and probably doesn't have free will, although maybe it has a little bit, who knows? But it certainly has consciousness. Mm-hmm. Even if you just take consciousness, not even human consciousness, as far as we know, all the evidence, 100% of the evidence that exists on planet Earth today and the universe that we know, suggests that consciousness is a feature of life, which means of biology, not of physics, of pure physics in a sense of zeros and ones in a simpler sense. Now, it's true that you can boil down life to zeros and ones. Maybe we're way far away from that. We have no idea how to create life, right? But life is self-directed
Self-sustaining action. Yeah.
Sustaining action.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know how to create that in a 0-1 world. We still can't create it in a laboratory, even with carbon molecules, that is with organic molecules. But all we know is it's related to life. So I think we have to talk about life first, and then consciousness, and then free will. I think life is required for consciousness, and consciousness is required for free will. Therefore, free will is required, life is required for free will. And as long as the robot is not alive, and as long as it's not a biological entity, I don't believe. Now, if it could,
well, but here's the thing too. I think you have to have not only consciousness, but also self-consciousness. So
I don't know that you can have consciousness without self-consciousness.
No, sure you could.
To have free will.
Right, because really what you want for rights is you would want to see somebody who actually has to have the need to act according to their own judgment, where their judgment, they are not omniscient, they're not infallible, right? They can make mistakes. And so they need the ability to guide their own mind freely in order to produce the values needed to sustain their lives, right? And so, I mean, there is the example of the immortal, indestructible robot that Leonard Peikoff talks about in OPAR. So that's another thing about robots, is that robots are indestructible. So are values even possible?
No, they're destructible.
Robots
are destructible, right?
Well, excuse me. Okay, but it's not like it's not a life-death alternative that they face we do.
It could be. I either get electricity or don't get electricity. I charge up or don't charge up. So I could imagine a scenario where the robots face so he has an indestructible, immutable robot.
That's right. But here, this robot could be destructible and have consciousness is the idea.
No, and this is the point. I think you're absolutely right. To have rights, the robot would have to have free will. It would have to have self-consciousness and free will. And so just consciousness would put it at the level of animals, which don't have rights. To have rights, it would have to have human-like consciousness, which means free will. And there's no evidence to suggest that's possible. Now, if you're interested in that dilemma, there is a show, there was a British show called Humans, where robots develop free will. And it deals with should they have rights or shouldn't they have rights, and how do humans deal with it, and the whole conflict that arises as a consequence. So I encourage everybody who's interested in that question to watch Humans. It's a good show. Why are intellectuals so prone to embracing evil ideas? Oh my God, that's a big question.
They're divorced from reality. They don't have to, sometimes they can get all lost in their heads and not really bump up against the real world.
I think that's part of it. But I think more fundamentally, it's most ideas developed in the history of mankind, intellectual ideas, philosophical ideas, have been bad. So with the exception of Aristotle, and the exception of some Enlightenment thinkers, if you go to school, who do you study? You study Plato. And if you take Plato seriously, then it leads to bad consequences, evil consequences. If you study Kant, and Kant's this dominant philosophical figure, and he had a comprehensive philosophy, and he was a genius, and he's convincing to many, many people. And if you don't like Kant, there's Hegel and Schopenhauer and all these others. There are millions of them. So if you today go to school and you're studying intellectual ideas, you're exposed almost zero to good ideas, to good ideas in terms of, or very little to good ideas that come from a system of good ideas that you can connect them. And almost all your exposure is to bad ideas. That's all the material you have to deal with, right? I mean, you took a PhD in philosophy.
I was going to give you this example, right? So I took a PhD in philosophy, and there was one seminar on Aristotle, and it was on Aristotle's Metaphysics Zeta, which for those of us who are geeks is interesting because it's out, it's about metaphysics and stuff. Okay, fine. But I mean, no seminar on Aristotelian ethics or politics or any of the more real world things. And as it stood, I wrote a seminar paper for that. And I was actually proud of the seminar paper. I disagreed with the professor and I thought I had a good argument and I wanted to hear his feedback. And it turned out he assigned a grade to it, an A, but as far as I could tell, he never read it.
Oh, wow.
So, but I was, I wanted to have that discussion because I had disagreed with his interpretation of this one section of Metaphysics Zeta that he had this dispute going with this other philosopher and whatever. I would have loved.
Amy has a point in the sense that there is some self-selection in terms of the kind of people who go become intellectuals. They are often people who are detached from reality. They're often people uninterested in the reality. Those people go into business, they go into engineering, they go into science.
Or there are people, and I can count myself among these types of people, who had kind of gnarly childhoods, and what you do to survive if you're in a gnarly household. Gnarly is a California term, sorry, challenging maybe as a euphemism. You go into your head a lot to survive. And I think that can, kind of dispose you certain ways. But I was also an athlete, so I think that kind of helps get me out of that. So, yeah.
But I think generally, unfortunately, a lot of these people are people who are not that interested in reality, in the problems of the world. And therefore, Kant and Plato appeal to them. I think if you gave a bunch of engineers to read Kant, they would go, "Oh, this is silly. I mean, he's telling me I can't, really do all the stuff that I do, or that it's meaningless." And so I think that's part of it. But again, philosophy is young. The human race is young. Good ideas are young. Ayn Rand's only been around for less than 100 years. Even Aristotle, 2,000 years, it's not that long. We've been around for well over 100,000 years. It just takes time for the good ideas. And the bad ideas resonate with religion, which has real deep roots in mankind, in the way I think, in our concepts, in our attitude towards life. And bad ideas, tend to leverage the religious ideas. They might be secular bad ideas, but they tend to leverage religion. So I think this
is what Jordan Peterson is doing now, right? He's leveraging it.
Yeah, religion is a powerful, powerful tool, and it's a powerful, powerful part of our psyche as individuals in a culture where it's true. Jordan Peterson is absolutely right in the sense that the stories of Jesus, the biblical stories, they have an important role to play in the culture. They influence the culture in profound ways. And that's why it's so hard for us who are saying, no, all those stories, bullshit, right? All those stories, they're bad. All those stories, they go against human nature and what's required for human success. It's hard to break that because these are stories, these ideas, these are metaphors, these are, again, the power of art that have been
allegory and stuff. Yeah,
allegory, mythology that people have accepted for generations upon generations upon generations. Now you're saying no, shadow all that is very, very difficult. So it's the culture is a culture of where these bad ideas in the intellectual sphere dominate, and it's very hard for people to break out of it. And it's very hard to convince people out in the world to break out of it, even though the people out in the world don't live those ideas, right? And this relates to this other question, which you should jump to. Mm-hmm. If Kant really won, why do we have iPhones and skyscrapers and super chats? Doesn't this show the Enlightenment is more powerful than Kant? Yes, it does. So there's a constant battle going on in the world, and has been for 200 years, between Kant and the Enlightenment, between Enlightenment and the anti-Enlightenment that comes after the Enlightenment. And in the realm of academia and in the realm of ideas and in the realm, Kant wins for the most part. And politically, once in a while, he wins big time. Communism, fascism, World War I, World War II, Pol Pot, big victories for Kant, millions, hundreds of millions of people dying, right? And people rebel against that. People rebel against those ideas and embrace life and embrace the Enlightenment. And
isn't pragmatism also connected back to Kant if you follow the chain, right?
Yeah, and the pragmatism, our politics is very much dominated, but the pragmatism is watered down Kant in the sense that it has to work in a reality. But the people are still infused with an Enlightenment spirit. And every once in a while, something will come by and reignite that Enlightenment spirit. In my view, Ayn Rand was a huge force in Western civilization, reigniting that Enlightenment spirit. It didn't turn everybody into an objectivist, but it reminded them what is possible in life. It reminded them that pursuing happiness, that pursuing profit, that being a businessman is a good thing, is a wonderful thing. And I think it re-energized America. I think Atlas Shrugged has had profound impact on America. even if it hasn't had a profound impact on academia and academic philosophy and the way people think intellectually. It's had an impact on the spirit, on enlightenment, on
and the other thing too. So where were iPhones and a lot of these things created by entrepreneurs in United States? And one thing that's true about United States that at least in the 70s Rand identified as being different from other parts of the world is having this American sense of life, where we actually have at least implicitly escape some of the influence of Kant. And if you're right, that Rand's influence has maybe to some extent helped to make explicit in some people's minds some of those ideas that were there. I don't know what the path looks like from here going forward in terms of the American sense of life. Are we going to be able to keep it alive? But I think, in Silicon Valley, it certainly has been.
No, you can't be right, Amy, because in Silicon Valley, they're all leftists. That can't be right. They're all Kantian leftists.
No, but there's some elements of the American sense of life that they have in them.
I have a feeling that the iPhone was created really in the Bible Belt and that Jobs stole it.
Okay.
So, those people have the real American spirit, and Silicon Valley is anti-American because it's so leftist. They can't exhibit, anyway. These are comments I often get, like, how can I admire Silicon Valley when they're leftist? Because politics is not what life's about, right? And it's not what life is all about. And these people in Silicon Valley do exhibit the American sense of life, of being entrepreneurs, of creating, of building, of trying, of experimenting, of failing, of using their reason to improve their own lives and creating values. And to ignore that because of politics is just absurd. But yeah, the iPhone is created in those pockets where Kant is not taken seriously epistemologically and metaphysically, where people still, the Enlightenment is alive and well, even if it is not reflected in people's politics.
Okay, and here's one other thing. One of the things that Rand talks about in the essay, Don't Let It Go, and my blog, don'tletitgo.com, is named after this essay. She wrote it in 1971. She talked about the various implicit attitudes that, in effect, Americans living the good life have. So all the things that Tucker Carlson is looking for in terms of the good life, probably you could say there's a lot of overlap with the American sense of life. And one attitude that she identified explicitly in that essay was that Americans were generally, unlike the rest of the world, anti-intellectual. So even though in our universities, Kant has been dominant, generally the general population in America has usually been anti-intellectual, and that has saved us to a large extent. And the intellectuals are unhappy, the Americans are happy, and these are other things she talks about in the essay. So yeah, I highly recommend the essay. Go to my blog, check it out.
An American sense of life is essentially the Enlightenment, and that is where it's maintained. It's maintained at the level of sense of life. But again, I do think Ayn Rand has helped sustain it. And think about it. From what we know, Steve Jobs, Larry Ellison, Michael Dell, Michael Milken, and you could go on and on and on with the innovators of the last 50 years, all read Atlas Shrugged at key moments in their lives. All of them. Yes. All of them were inspired by the book. All of them.
I think that's also true of Zuckerberg.
I don't know when Zuckerberg read the book, but maybe it didn't make them objectivists. It clearly didn't make them objectivists, but it inspired in them that Enlightenment spirit, and it stayed at the level of sense of life. But wow, that's what's keeping the world going. So Ayn Rand, to a large extent, is keeping the world going. All right, Yaron, I'm sorry, Amy.
That's fine.
So at some point we'll get back to your topics. Yaron, you mentioned there is more idealism on the left. Isn't there also more nihilism on the left? Yes, there's more nihilism, and there's more idealism. So you get both, which is dangerous, because ultimately what could happen is people vote the idealism and get the nihilism. That is, that the nihilists will dominate, at least for a while, even though people are voting the idealism. I always, AOC, Alexandria or something Cortez, I think is a representative of the idealism. And I'm going to talk about that more tomorrow, because I've got some good clips of her talking about the fact that everything is about morality. And having an idealistic view of morality. I've already done one show on this. I'll do more because it's such an important topic.
Yes.
And yet behind her are all these nihilists who are just waiting for somebody like her to gain power and to exploit that to smash and destroy and bring about the end of Western civilization. So I think you get both on the left. Now, of course, you get both on the right. So what is Donald Trump? He clearly, or Tucker Carlson, they're not idealists. So they are pragmatists. And they are pragmatists, particularly Trump. Trump is the worst kind of pragmatist imaginable. Is, that to a large extent ultimately becomes nihilism. When the facts about immigration don't matter. The facts about people coming here don't matter. Facts about crime don't matter. None of that matters. What we want is to smash those immigrants. As some people express themselves online, just go to the caravan and start shooting them. Now that's nihilism that's as bad as the nihilism on the left. Right? Mm-hmm. So I think the right has abandoned idealism, and this is why the left is going to win. The left has idealism and nihilism. All the right has is various levels of pragmatism, all the way leading to this complete nihilism. Right? So
all we can hope is we can get. Can I jump in with Ryan's question? What do you think of?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So he asks how to broach the morality of altruism with friends, family in a way that comes across seriously. I lose steam when they look at me like I am insane. So 2 things. 1, I don't know that you actually need to confront your friends and family about this issue. I don't know what you gain. Now, it could be that you need to broach this because, for example, you need to maintain boundaries with your friends or family about something, and they're expecting you to be an altruist. And so, you have to do this. But why not avoid it you don't need to, for sure. And Rand talked about this sometimes, you don't have this idea that you're going to convert your
family. Let's say he
wants
to. He's asking for advice. He wants to.
Okay. So if you want to, first of all, they have to want to have the discussion as well, right? The values are chosen sort of thing. So if they're open to having these sorts of discussions, then I would do it as much as possible, appealing to things that they care about and giving them sorts of examples about how, following an altruistic morality is going to negatively impact the things that they themselves care about. I'm having a number of discussions with Benjamin, about this issue and he wrote a whole blog post just starting the discussion about how do you more effectively convince people. And you have to meet them where they are, and you have to appeal to the things that matter to them. So some of it could just be application in a particular context that means a lot to them, where they can actually see. This is where Alex Epstein has been so hugely successful, right? Because he's been able to go to these fossil fuel, mostly oil producers, and appeal to the things that matter to them and apply a proper morality in that context. And I think you get a lot of leverage when you're really getting into an area. So, there's more discussion to be had about this for sure, but it's, kind of meet them where their values are.
Yeah, meet them where their values are, but also in one way is just to live a good life.
Yes.
And let them come to you and ask, why are you so happy, in a sense? And say to them, look, I'm guided by values. I'm honest. I have integrity. I'm working hard. I'm productive. And I care about my life. And, don't involve me in your altruism, right? I'm involved in my life. This is what I do. If you want to know why this is good for you, I'm happy to explain. But don't, this is what I did. This is what we all did when we were young. We argued endlessly and we were obnoxious about it. And we went to them without being asked and started lecturing them about altruism and ego, and they don't care, right? What they want, the only way you can make them care is to show them that there's something really valuable here. There's something really interesting here. There's something important for their life. And the best way to that is to show them rather than to preach to them. And the best way to show them is to be happy, is to be successful in your own life. And then present it as I'm successful in my own life because I focus on the importance of my own life. Remember, there's a wonderful video online now that the Ayn Rand Institute just put up of Anka talking about Ayn Rand's unique approach to ethics. And the point he's making is Ayn Rand's question is, and this is unique to her, it's how do I live a good life? What are the principles necessary for me to live well? She doesn't start with, I'm against altruism. I'm against this, I'm against that. She starts with what is necessary for me to live a good life? What is necessary for man to live the best life that it can be? What are the principles I should follow? And if you go to them with that, rather than with attacking their altruism, go to them with the benefits of, well, how do you live a good life? What does it require? Well, first of all, more than anything, it requires thinking about it. It requires actually focusing on my life, which is what egoism is all about. It's what is good for me. How do I do that? Right? So emphasize the positive. Don't just yell at the negative. Don't just attack the negative. All right, let me just do these two liberal Deutsch questions quickly because he's upset at me for not wanting to travel to Germany. I don't like traveling in Germany. I don't like Germany. I apologize when I mentioned that. I thought of you, liberal Deutsch, because I don't like the language, there's too much of the association in my mind and in my awareness of what happened in Germany not that long ago historically, and it's associated with me with the language and with the place. And when I'm there, I think of it. I can't avoid it.
Yeah.
But you are right. He says, implanting the antidote to Kant right into its germ cell should be a fun conquest even Patton would envy you for. Well, anything that causes Patton to be jealous of me is okay with me because he's a hero of mine, in spite of the fact that he was a little insane. Yeah, I agree with you. So it's not that I don't go to Germany. It's not that I won't go if you invite me. It's not that I would ever turn down a university that wanted me to come and speak. I would do it as a sacrifice to the cause, of course. I'm kidding. But, it wouldn't be as pleasant as it would be for me to speak somewhere else. But I am eager to come to Germany. If you have a venue for me to speak, please invite me. I'm going to be in Europe in March, and I would love to come to Germany to speak. I'm always happy to do that. He continues, you said the Germans take ideas seriously. So just let them take you seriously and you're done. True, and indeed, my biggest following within Europe is from Germany.
Oh, wow, okay.
Israel, by the way, has you beat, Germans. I don't know how you let those Jews do that, but Israel has you beat, but Germany is the biggest, I know it's terrible. Germany is the biggest audience I have in Europe. So I'm happy to come to Germany. Again, I reply, anybody who wants to invite me to come and speak in Germany, please contact me, Yaron at yaronbookshow.com, or contact Annie at Ayn Rand Europe. And let's get some.
Or you can write me as well over at my blog. Yeah.
Come and speak in Germany. I think she has less of a visceral response. She actually enjoyed Berlin. You were in Berlin with Leonard years ago, right? I remember that.
Yeah, I enjoyed it to a certain extent. It's disturbing because, you saw I don't know how, blurred it is now, but then you really saw the distinction, right?
East and
West and East. Yes.
But yeah, it's disturbing to me personally. I think of Hitler when I think of Germany. I can't avoid it, and I don't think I should.
I saw the museum, where they talk about all the people trying to escape the eastern side, and the things that they did, how they packed themselves underneath parts of cars and all. It's still vivid in my mind that the horrible things that people tried to do to escape.
All right, so please invite me to Germany, Liberal Deutsch, and I promise to try to implant the antidote as far as I can. Okay, Action Jackson asks, this one's for you, Amy, what is your opinion on preteen drag queen, preteen go-go dances appearing on ABC's Good Morning America? Which I haven't seen, so
okay, wait, preteen which? What are we having? Preteen
dancing and drag queen.
Okay, so the go-go dancing and the drag queen by preteens.
Yeah. Can I say what I think?
Yeah, of course.
It's horrible. I think it's terrible. Why would parents do this to their kids? And then why would all the viewers view this as something entertaining. It's preteens playing around with sex when they don't understand what it is. Do you remember that girl who was murdered? That little girl who was murdered?
Oh, yes. She was only 5 years old, and she was this beauty pageant
queen with makeup and wigs. And I found that so despicable and disgusting that a parent would put their kids through that a parent would sexualize their child. And that's what the drag queens and the go-go dancers, it's sexualizing a child. I don't think children should be sexualized. I don't think a parent should be sexualizing their children at all. I think the whole phenomena is disgusting, and the parents are horrible. But more horrible to me is that people watch this and that ABC puts it on television. Yeah. But that people watch it and ABC wouldn't put it on television if people complained and didn't watch it. But people watch it. Oh, look how cute they are. No, they're not cute. It's disgusting.
I think, it's very tricky to do anything to encourage anything about a child's sexuality. You have to let them come to their own, decisions about that as much as possible.
Teach them about the facts. And you let them know when they reach puberty that it's normal, and you teach them about what's going on and what's happening. But they have to develop sexuality, has to be their value. But to preteen is just, I find it just.
Yeah, and to encourage in a particular direction, I would not. So, yeah.
So will we be watching Trump tonight?
I was going to ask, I figured you would be tweeting live or something his speech. Because
no, I can't stand it. I try not to watch politicians live as much as I can. I used to tweet Obama's State of the Union addresses, and people say I never used to. And you're so anti-Trump. You never used to say the stuff about Obama.
I was on with him. I'm a witness. We were both live tweeting Obama.
We were live tweeting Obama.
Shredding him as much as we could. Yeah.
And so, no, I'm not gonna watch him. I can't stand watching him unless I was live tweeting him, and I don't have the energy tonight to live tweet him. But I would, but I'll read his comments tomorrow. I prefer reading anyway.
I might try.
I hate watching politicians. I prefer reading politicians. And then I can actually look at what they have to say. I assume that if he's doing a live address, it's going to be pre-prepared. It's going to be written out. It's going to be a speech. He'll ad lib a little bit. But I also know what he's going to say. And it's going to be filled with lies and distortions and exaggerations. And when I read it, I'll analyze it for you, but I'm not going to watch him. It's just not worth it.
Can we get on to the topic that we've chosen for the show today, which is this issue of arbitrary power by government? I know you've got all these questions, but we could probably just do Q&A the whole time. It's sounding like.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I didn't expect that.
Well, it's excellent that everyone's got.
Let's see if there's anything. What do I think of the Joan Birch Society? What I know of it, I don't like. Are leftists just bratty nihilists who pepper spray people? No, most leftists don't pepper spray anybody, and most leftists are not nihilists. While the right will actually throw you in a gas chamber. No, I think they both throw you in a gas chamber. I think they're both very, very dangerous. In a few weeks, I'm going to explain to my socialist grandparents that I'm not going to let them pay my college education. I don't want it to be on my conscience. Good job, Riley. That sounds fantastic. Today is Jose Ferreira's birthday. What are your thoughts on his performance of Cyrano de Bergerac? Best Cyrano de Bergerac. Oh, no, not the best, because there's one better one. Leonard used to have this one with that British actor. Oh, my God. I forgot his name. But a great Cyrano de Bergerac. So good. There is another version, but I can't remember the actor's name. I can see his face, can't remember his name. I'll get back to you on that. And the other $5, the message was retracted. We're back to pragmatism and the power of government. Go for it.
Okay, yeah. So I intended sort of the discussion of the Tucker Carlson segment to kind of fit into that a little bit, because this idea that you're going to, choose different government interventions in order to push people towards family and stuff. It's leaning towards the arbitrary itself because it's so vague. How do you know which sort of intervention is going to push people to have strong, independent families? It almost just becomes the personal.
Well, you can imagine if you were in Tucker's head, not allowing gay marriage, maybe, or
not allowing divorce,
marriage penalty, or making divorce a little bit more difficult. I don't think he would come out against divorce, but he would make it more difficult, or not celebrating. I don't know how the government would do this, not celebrating single mothers, but I don't know how the government would get involved in there. Maybe a tax penalty on single mothers, not giving welfare to single mothers, or, finding ways to penalize the behavior he doesn't like. Penalize means taxing, because he talked about tax policy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And benefiting behavior he does like. So if you're a woman and a man and you have 7 kids, huge tax breaks.
Right.
If you're 2 women having a kid, no tax breaks, maybe a tax penalty. Single mother, tax penalty. So something like that is what I could imagine him doing, using the tax code to penalize bad behavior and reward good behavior.
Yeah. And then the question will we, kind of end up at the end, but we've got a couple different examples of government, in effect, deciding that they're going to arrogate to themselves arbitrary power. And the one example that you sent me was all the different decisions being made about what they're going to spend money on during this partial shutdown. Because they have tons of discretion, right?
Yeah,
and
you think there's no money because a budget hasn't been approved. So there's literally no money. So people are not going to get paid. Government offices are going to shut down. Government services are going to go away. But no, the government gets to decide. The president the executive gets to decide. I don't know where Congress is on this. The executive gets to decide what he's going to keep open, what he's going to shut down, how much he's going to keep it open, how many employees are going to get paid, who's not going to get paid, who's going to keep working. It's bizarre how random and lack of rule of law and just arbitrary. So the one I noticed was people were really upset because they weren't going to get their tax refunds.
But now they're going to have them, right?
So he decided, oh no, we are going to exclude tax refunds from the shutdown, and you will get. And I was going, why this and not 1,000 other things? By what criteria? By what standard? By what principle?
In the program notes over at the blog at don'tletitgo.com, because I did a little bit of research, I have 3 different stories, and one that was interesting. It talks about national parks are actually going to have some sort of expansion in funding during this shutdown, which is bizarre.
Yeah, I don't know how these laws work, but it's complete
discretion. I mean, there's certain things about which they give discretion, and I guess in the shutdown, there's discretion.
Yeah, there's discretion.
And of course, Obama did all this stuff too, right? I remember when there was an Obama shutdown, and it was, the memorials in Washington, D.C. that veterans love to visit. Those were the things that Obama shut down. And it was just, as if he's trying to tell them, a big F you to the people, you're the ones who are against me that are making this shutdown happen. And so therefore I'm going to penalize you. So that's one. But here's another one that when you talked about arbitrary powers, this fits right into it. Here's Donald Trump tweeting today, and he's bragging about his economic numbers. He says, economic numbers look really good, looking really good. Can you imagine if I had long-term 0 interest rates to play with, like the past administration, rather than the rapidly raised normalized rates we have today? That would have been so easy. Still, markets up big since the 2016 election. To me, those 2 words, play with, just reveals how he sees what he's doing.
It's so disgusting. I mean, he is such a central planner, and he is such a central planner in every fiber of his body. He wants to manipulate everything, including interest rates. And he's such a liar, because when he ran for president, he constantly used to say, oh, well, this 0 interest rate policy is a really bad policy. This is going to create bubbles, and it's really bad for the economy, and it's what keeps Obama, afloat, and we should get rid of it. As soon as I win the elections, I'm going to make rational interest rate policy and not allow this 0 interest. Now he wants 0 interest rate policy that he can play with. The great economist, the great guru of interest rates. Now, I don't believe there should be a Federal Reserve at all, and it should be left to the market to play with interest rates. But the idea of the dictator-in-chief, the central planner-in-chief, playing with interest rates, manipulating.
Well, so the way I interpreted the tweet was that the 0 interest rates would create some sort of a financial climate, and he could play like in a sandbox, So there's this 0 interest rate.
And he would shut these companies out, and build those companies. And
yeah, so it's like he's playing with the whole economy within the zero interest rate sandbox or something.
Yes, but also he gets to raise interest rates and lower interest rates. He would get to do all that because he wants to get rid of power. He would love to be able to control the Federal Reserve. He would love for that to be a lever that he could play with in his sandbox. So he would, that's just one of the aspects of the way he would love to control the economy. And it's probably the most important and powerful aspects of all. Interest rates are a massive lever that you have in the economy. And he wants that lever, and he wants, he views zero interest rates positively.
Well, okay, so I don't read the tweet that way. I don't read the tweet that way necessarily. I don't read. I mean, we could
an opportunity to control other levers in the economy because of the robust growth zero interest rates would give.
Yeah, I think that he wants to not be completely inconsistent with what he said during the campaign, right? So his complaint is not that it's not zero. He wants to, first of all, brag and say, look, my economy is so good. Imagine what it would be if I had these zero interest rates. Yeah, I'm against them. But what I don't like, and this is what he's against. It's not that he wants to keep them at zero, but he doesn't want them to be raised and normalized rapidly, whatever that means. So he's going to tell you, this is what he would tell you. He'd say, no, I'm still against the zero interest rates. I'm just like I was in the campaign. I'm not changing my mind. But what I'm against is the rapidly raised.
But he just said he wants a sandbox with, he wants to.
No, but he wants you to basically give him credit for the economic numbers
more than that.
Compared to Obama.
He is saying Obama had zero interest rates and had a crummy economy. Mm-hmm. He has rising interest rates and a great economy. Imagine if he had zero interest rates. It would be a gigantic, humongous economy. That's what he's saying. He's saying he's not channeling the rational economics of Trump under Obama. He's channeling the humongous potential of the U.S. economy under Trump.
Now see what he's done to us. We're debating. We're debating about this. I do think I'm right, but it really doesn't matter because what I wanted to draw your attention to more is this attitude of his that it's play.
Yeah.
That
but to me that's playing with it. To me that's control. Playing is control. That he can play with the economy. He can control the economy.
He can be arbitrary about it is what I'm.
Yeah, he's a central planner. He can, but his goal in playing is to make it better. But he's going to move pieces around. He is going to be the central planner in chief. He's a dictator. He's an authoritarian at heart. I've always said this. And this is an example. He wants something more to play with, something more to facilitate his ability.
Okay. So then he likes the shutdown. Because he has so much discretion about how to spend the money during the shutdown.
Yes, absolutely. And it plays to his base, and it's an opportunity for him to rile against immigration and to rally the base up. And he might win the shutdown. That is, he might get some kind of wall. So he'll probably compromise and get something, because I don't think he cares about a wall. He doesn't care one iota about a wall. But it's a great opportunity for him to be in the headlines, for him to be the center of attention, and for everybody to talk about what he wants us to talk about, which in this case is immigration.
Yeah. I mean, he cares about it to some extent, and that he wants it to create a demand for steel, because that's one thing he was bragging about in the tweets, right? Is that
everything is calculated to just to show the Americans that he's for them, that he is going to help them in some way. So he'll tweet about the steel, but then he won't tweet about the users of steel that now are going bankrupt and the auto companies that have declining profits and all of that. That doesn't interest him. He'll only give you facts if those facts are supportive of his case, and he'll ignore everything else, and then he'll make up a bunch of facts. Anyway.
Yeah. I'm looking outside in California here at the most beautiful sunset. There's just like Maxfield Parrish style clouds going across, like in horizontal lines across the sky, and pinks alternating with blue. It's crazy. It's just gorgeous. So I was distracted for a second, but so I wanted to talk, if you are okay with this, a little bit about this poor woman. Rahaf is maybe how you pronounce her name, Rahaf Mohammed.
I mean, this is a test, right? Any country that has a proper foreign policy. So tell us about the woman first, because I'm just
okay. So Rahaf Mohammed is only 18 years old, And she decided, per quotations from her in the New York Times article, that she was leaving her religion, that she is an atheist. And she also took a very risky step, which was, she's from Saudi Arabia. Her family was vacationing in Kuwait. And she saw being in Kuwait, where travel without a male guardian is allowed versus Saudi Arabia, she saw her opportunity to go ahead and get on a plane and try to leave her family. And part of it is because she says she had suffered abuse. At one point, she had been beaten up because she got a haircut that her family didn't approve of. She'd been threatened with being killed. She actually said she tried to kill herself when she was 16. She didn't succeed. Her family didn't get her help. Horrible situation. And so she decided to try to escape. And she, I think, had a visa that was going to get her to Australia. Yep. But when she stopped in Bangkok in Thailand, I don't know if the airport actually is in Bangkok, but our embassy is there. I know that because I've been tweeting to them. But she was intercepted by the authorities because her father, apparently said
the Saudis put pressure on the authorities. Yeah. The Saudi embassy, yes. Saudi authorities put pressure on the Thai authorities to stop her. They apprehended her. She was apprehended. Her passport was taken away, and she was basically told that she would be extradited to Saudi Arabia. She would return to Saudi Arabia, and her father was there, and he was going to take her back. Or
sent back via Kuwait or something. I'm not sure which. But there was a flight that was going to Kuwait.
Legal age. She can make her own decisions. Didn't matter to them. Didn't matter.
No. And, supposedly it was that she's insane. But then when they asked, they doesn't have any evidence that she's actually insane or disturbed or anything else. Of course, if you leave their religion, they think you're insane. So there's that. But, what she ended up having to do in order to avoid being put on that plane is she holed herself up in a hotel room. They had her in an airport hotel. They said, you're going to wait till this next plane tomorrow, and then we're going to put you on it. She put all the furniture against the door, and she started tweeting. She created a Twitter account, this one that I linked to in the program notes. And she just started tweeting about her situation. And she said, per the UN, I claim asylum and I'm seeking and everything. And she created this big stir. And there's a whole bunch of us, me included, who have spent a lot of time just drawing attention to her. New York Times picked up the story. Kudos to them. But she now, as far as I understand, her visa to Australia was revoked, and I don't know why, but before they were talking about, well, you can't have a visa if you don't have enough money and things like this.
Well, there's probably pressure by the Saudis on the Australians.
Yeah. And so there was enough attention brought to it. And also she, barricaded herself in this hotel room. She wasn't going to let them take her out. And she's live tweeting from this place and video and everything. Drew enough attention such that the UN eventually was permitted to come in and speak to her. And as I understand it, her current status is that she is under the custody of the Thai police authorities, but in coordination with United Nations. And she is seeking asylum. This is, what does she need? She needs a country that offers religious freedom and equal rights for women and a reasonable prospect of safety. Yep. She needs those things. It is unfathomable that in the 21st century, we can be on Twitter witnessing a woman who is at risk of being, at 18 years old, turned over to a family who will likely kill her. Why? Because she left her religion and she's disgraced them or whatever it is,
Nobody will do anything about it.
Yes.
Where's the principled foreign policy of Donald Trump? Where's the principled foreign policy of the Canadians, the Australians, the New Zealanders, the Swiss, the English, any of these countries? All they have to do is grant asylum. I'm sure she can probably, get a job when she gets there. I don't think she's the kind of person who wants to live on welfare or wants to be a ward of the state. All she needs is permission to enter your country. Here's why I am so pro-immigration. Why I think it should be so easy to come into this country, into a country, because of an individual like this. And I would take an individual like this who's fighting for her life and declaring herself an atheist. She is so much more important. She's a million times more important than some Mexicans that you don't like that might cross over the border as part of it and drive down wages or whatever. It just drives me.
I'm basically in awe of this girl. I mean, imagine you are 18 years old and you decide to declare. I mean, I declared, I don't know when I declared it, but I, decided I was an atheist at 12 or whatever. But in my family, there wasn't this anti-atheist pressure that there. I mean, if she leaves her religion, she is risking her life.
She was an apostate, and
yes,
by Islamic law, she would be killed.
yes.
And we're talking about Saudi Arabia that has money, resources, influence, people everywhere, and her life is really in danger. This is not a joke. And then no country will step up and take her in. Tells you all you need to know. We'll see. Maybe somebody will step up. All you need to know.
It's early days. I mean, this was happening on Sunday, and then Sunday night I was out there. I have one connection on Twitter who knew some people in State Department, whatever. And what I heard is we're watching it. And to me, watching it is not enough. Now you could say, okay, maybe United States will watch it if she doesn't get a better offer. She wanted to go to Australia, but if now, as I understand, she doesn't have the option of going to Australia, why are we not snapping her up like that?
Well, and I don't know if you know, but there was this other girl who was ultimately tied up, gagged, dragged out of a hotel room, and put on a plane to Saudi Arabia, taken home, and she's never been heard of since. So that's the fate that awaits her. This is not theoretical. This has happened. You can research it. You can find the name. This has happened.
And the other thing I've seen on her feed is endless people threatening her life on the feed as well. So this woman,
ally. This is the enlightened kingdom of Saudi Arabia. These are the people there. This is what we support. This is who we defend. This is who we sell the most sophisticated weapons in the world to. This is who Donald Trump dances with. No women, by the way, when he danced. This is who Donald Trump dances with. This is what we kiss their boots. This is what Obama bowed to. This is some of the most evil, primitive, barbaric culture in the world. And we just, what the hell? Let's sacrifice another 18-year-old girl to it.
So Rahaf Mohammed, we are going to continue to watch the situation. We are with you. And I'm ashamed that our embassy has not just snapped you up. So
that's just horrible. Okay, Kaiko asks, should we be forced to disclose financial ties? It depends. In the private sector, no, not unless it's contractual. In the public sector, sure. I think that if you're going to get a government job, you should disclose what your financial ties, what your business ties are.
Of course, it shouldn't matter, right? I mean, the biggest problem right now, the reason that it's so much news what Trump's business ties are and everything else is because the government has power to manipulate the economy and pick winners and losers such that those ties matter. If government didn't have this power, I don't know that all of those things would matter.
It wouldn't matter. Still think you'd have some of it, but it would be true.
Yeah, it'd be far reduced. And maybe you'd say, okay, well, if you have financial ties to XYZ industries, then, right?
Yeah, it would have to be like defense industries that still have ties.
Prisons, something. I'm thinking.
So even in a rational society, some industries, a few, would have ties to the government, primarily defense, police, security.
Right.
Like that. All right, Aquila. I can't pronounce your name. Sorry, Aquila. I can't pronounce the rest of your name. Ask a very philosophical question that we're going to have to kind of get to on another time, but I'll just give a brief answer. What is the primary choice to focus? It's the choice to focus. What makes it primary? Nothing else. You can't do anything else before you do that. That is, to think, you have to first focus. To think, you have to first observe. You have to first be engaged with reality, whether it's internal reality, introspection, or external reality. You can't introspect, you can't think, you can't reason, you can't form concepts, you can't, without that initial focus with reality. Yes, I see the color of the wall, I see its contours, I see what's out there. That is the primary. How does one initiate a state of full focus? That's what free will is. It's that effort that you exert to bring yourself into focus. That is the essence of free will, that effort. You can either do it or not do it. That's your primary and most fundamental choice. How does it happen? You just do it. That's how it happens. how do you maintain it throughout time? Practice and effort and choice. You have to choose to do it. It's as though one can forget he is in focus. You have to, that's what happens. Like, you don't think about how to shift gears on a manual car. If you've driven a manual car your whole life, it just happens. If you train yourself to be in focus. Now you have to continuously ignite it. You have to continuously choose it. It's not automatized, but once you choose it, it becomes easier and easier and easier.
And then one of the other choices too is there's a number of, like we say, driving a car. Yeah. You can drive a car very well, almost automatically, while you're thinking about other things. And so one of the big choices you have to make is, what things can you allow yourself to do in an automatic fashion, and what things do you need to actually devote the focused attention to? This is where the people who write books and things about changing habits and stuff, they talk about decision fatigue, and how if you're going to change your habits, you try to do one at a time, because it is work to override your automatic ways of dealing with it, or your automatized ways of dealing with the world. So it's, but yeah, you should probably have, I would say, Greg or Onkar, right?
Yeah, we'll have a philosopher of
Aaron,
kind
right?
of fields like Onkar and Greg, and to talk more about that, because that's an important issue. And it relates to Ayn Rand's unique view of free will. And the Ayn Rand Institute is going to be producing a number of content relating to this. One of them is going to be a discussion about this issue with Dave Rubin. So it's going to be a while before it comes out, but I'm very excited about it. And it's part of a series we're doing with Dave Rubin. And part of it is to engage with these ideas that people like Sam Harris bring up around free will. All right.
Excellent.
You seem to imply I think this is the last super chat. Okay. Well, last two. You seem to imply that the EU statism is better for Germany than lesser local statism. Just because it is Germany, isn't that unprincipled? No, Germany has a character. Germany has a history. One can't ignore the character, the intellectual character, and the history. What about hate speech and Holocaust denial laws? Those are terrible. Those exist in Germany, and they exist in the European Union, and both should be eliminated. So there's nothing to suggest that if Germany left the European Union, it would be freer. I think there's a lot to suggest that it would be less free. Immigration being a good example of that. So for Germany, it's probably reducing its statism by being in the EU. Now, I'm open to being wrong on this. So you can show me examples where, German politicians wanted to become more free, but the EU didn't allow them to do that. But Holocaust denial laws were invented by Germany, and they were implemented then by the EU, but they started in Germany. Those were the first anti-free speech laws post-World War II.
Isn't it true that, other things being equal, if Germany is in the EU, then for German citizens, there are more choices that they are free to make with regard to trading partners, people that they can hire from outside Germany, et cetera, and that therefore it's going to maybe...
It partially depends on what Germany would do if they left the EU. So this is my argument about Brexit.
Yes.
If Germany left the EU and declared itself a free market, free trade, free immigration with other Europeans, put aside the Muslim immigration for a minute, free all of this stuff, then fine, it would be better than if it stayed in the EU. But what are the odds of that happening? Even in England, in the UK, it's not happening. So Germany, it's very, very, very...
Yeah, and that's why I was saying other things being equal, because the purpose of the EU was, as I understand it, and when you look at, for instance, the privacy law that the EU has been putting out there, the focus is on facilitating free trade among the...
It is, but of course they do that through regulations like the privacy law by stuff that is very bad. And then it's imposed on everybody. You can't opt out of it. So if you in Germany say, oh no, the privacy law we don't want, you can't do that because you got the EU. So the EU imposes its statism. Now, the idea of the statism is always to make life better in some way. They always use that excuse, even though that's not what it's about. Okay, last question from the super chat. Can you say something in Yiddish? This is liberal Deutsch is on the roll.
I can one word.
You know a word?
Schlepp.
Schlepp. Okay, schlepp is...
That's a great word. I love that word. Schlepping things here and there.
Chutzpah, I don't think is in Yiddish. I think that's Hebrew. I don't know that it's a word even, but no, I can't because the only word I know in Yiddish is a bad word. So no, I can't on air say anything in Yiddish.
You don't know more words in Yiddish than I do?
No, I don't know any words in Yiddish. I mean, I'm sure if somebody mentioned them, I'd say, yeah, I know that word. Like schleppen.
I'm not even Jewish, and I grew up with that word, just loving. That's the perfect word. It's a great word.
Yiddish was not a language anybody spoke around me. It's not a language.
I think it's a Yiddish word. Actually, I don't even know for sure it is. I think
is a Yiddish word. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh my God. Do a history of Christianity lecture. If I knew Christianity well enough to do a history of Christianity,
we've got to have James Valiant. James Valiant knows everything about history of Christianity.
Okay, we can interview Jim Valiant at some point.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
I interviewed him, by the way, on my show. I can.
Okay, so go to Amy's show. Jim Valiant did a history of Christianity.
And he's done a series of interviews recently. If you go to James Valiant's Facebook page, he's been sharing them a series of interviews more recently, because I did mine a couple of years ago. Good. So do you want to look at some of these other stories? We're getting out of time. I think.
Yeah, it's already an hour and 25 minutes. What are the stories? Let's see if there's anything that we really have to do.
Well, do you want to give a preview of AOC and her radicalism?
I'm going to do that tomorrow. I'm going to do a whole show on that. So
okay.
Because that's a good issue. China offers Trump a trade peace deal. I mean, I've said this all along. China is going to offer something. Trump is going to declare victory. It's going to be meaningless. It was probably stuff China would have done anyway. There's going to be no big substantial breakthroughs in the China thing, unfortunately. I mean, because I don't think the United States wants them. I don't think Donald Trump really wants free trade with China. I think it's more likely, here's a crazy statement. It's more likely that China wants free trade with the United States than the United States wants free trade with China.
That's a sorry state of affairs, isn't it?
Leadership in China probably knows more economics than Donald Trump does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is willing to.
That's a whole discussion about foreign policy. Let's leave that for a future show. We should probably do something on Bolton and Turkey and Saudi Arabia and Syria, and they're leaving Afghanistan. That'll give us a good excuse. Maybe next time. Lots of super chat, but with Patreon now crashing, this is a big source of revenue. So
right.
Yeah, excellent. It's supplementing it's making up for.
So what is the alternative to
a month on Patreon so far? It's down by $1,000 from December to January.
Are you going to stay on Patreon then still?
Until I figure out the alternative. There's an alternative yet.
Okay.
Trying to get it set up on Subscribestar, but it's still not working properly. And I'm still waiting for Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin for their solution. And what I am going to do is on my website, I'm going to have a subscription option on the website where you can make payments directly on the website to me. And I will include there a variety of different payment options, or one of them being Bitcoin or Bit something. So people will be able to support me even if a particular. See, I don't think anybody's coming after me. I don't think Patreon would dump me, but I just don't like dealing with them given the arbitrariness of their decision making.
Yeah, there was somebody who was calling into question some of it, but I looked through this guy's argument on the video. I don't know if you saw that video that was going around, and I decided there were certain questions that he didn't answer about Patreon and them not consistently and reliably enforcing their terms of service in a way that would make anybody worried, in terms of relying on income there. For me, I did not have a very big Patreon, and I would definitely like to be able to take in an income doing this. Everything I do, by the way, everybody, it's free. I don't get paid anything to do any of this with this, Tucker, anything. So if you want to make a donation at my blog at don'tletitgo.com, it is very welcome. There were a couple people who just before the end of the year made a little donations to me. Nice. Thank you very much for people who did it. I didn't go out and ask for it in particular.
The best way to do that is on her blog.
Don'tletitgo.com. I've got program notes there today and stuff. So Thanks to everybody. I always think each time I'm with Tucker, I don't know if he's going to invite me on again, but he's been inviting me back, and I'm going to continue to pursue that as much as possible. And it's kudos to him for letting me discuss. But as it stands right now, I do not have a career at this, although I think I would enjoy it if I did. It'd be nice if I could. We'll see.
Good. Well, I will be on tomorrow. I will be on maybe on Friday from Denver. I'll be in Denver on Friday. And then we're back on Tuesday.
Yes.
And then I don't know after that. So next week, I'm going to do a lot of shows because after that, my travel schedule gets nuts. And I don't know how many shows I'll be able to do. So we're going to try to cram a bunch of shows next week. You'll also notice that I'm putting up like a short video every day is going up. I've got a volunteer, a Christian, who is splicing all my videos up and creating these short videos. And it's great. So we're putting up a lot of those. Amy, are you doing a show next week?
I am not sure because I'm ambivalent. I really need to finish my book.
Finish the book.
And yeah.
I'm pro Amy finishing the book.
Yes, because that is, I think, the thing that would get me on more different shows and then give me an opportunity to perhaps get a real position.
Good. And I will be in Europe, and my speaking schedule is on my website, yaronbrookshow.com. It might not be complete right now because we're in the process of working the 2018 schedule, but I will be in Europe in February, in the UK and in Sweden and in St. Petersburg and in Prague.
You're going to be in the UK in February?
Yeah.
Where in the UK?
In London.
Just in London. Okay. Yeah. I'm not going to, I'm flying through London and come. That's it.
I'm going to be doing high schools in the UK. I'm going to be speaking at probably 10 different high schools in the UK. I'm looking forward to it. It should be exciting. And I'm doing a debate at Kent. And then I'll be back in March. And in March, I'll be in Amsterdam, and I'll be in UK again, and I'll be in Israel, and I'll be in, I don't know, in somewhere else. Bunch of other places. Maybe Italy. I'm trying to get a gig in Italy. And in Belgrade at the European Students for Liberty European Conference. Okay,
excellent.
Cool.
Sounds all right, good. Thank you, Yaron.
Have a great night. I'm going to watch my new favorite show. Not my favorite show, but my new, I don't know if you've seen this. My new TV show that I've been watching recently. It's the Magnificent, I think it's called, Mrs. Maisel. And it's terrific. If you haven't seen the Magnificent Mrs. Maisel, you should. It's on Prime, Amazon Prime. So it's free if you have Amazon Prime. It's funny. It's got a fantastic sense of life. It is positive and energetic and really good 50s and 60s music. And it's uplifting, and it's, did I say funny, and lots of Jewish humor. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. Lenny Bruce is a regular character on the show. Lenny Bruce, the comedian of the 50s and 1960s. And definitely worth watching. So my latest recommendation is The Magnificent. I think it's a fabulous or magnificent Mrs. Maisel on Prime, Amazon Prime. And they don't pay me to do these gigs. They should. All right. And
someday you'll get an endorsement contract. You should get one someday.
If you haven't watched Mr. Sunshine, then what can I say?
Someone is recommending you go do mushrooms in Amsterdam or something. It's ridiculous.
I'm not doing mushrooms in Amsterdam. I'm not doing any drugs in Amsterdam. I like Amsterdam when I'm in focus. Amsterdam requires focus, people. There's a lot to see in Amsterdam, and it requires focus. Rembrandts and Vermeers and
Van Gogh, even.
What's that?
Van Gogh.
Van Gogh. I'm not a big fan, but yes, I of all the modern artists, at least there's something there. But
there are some beautiful pieces by him, but yeah, it's mixed.
Anyway, Mr. Sunshine, and which is better than Fabulous Miss Maisel. Best TV show I've seen in many years. Go see that. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Amy.
Someone is asking about advanced knowledge about my shows or your shows. If you want to know what I'm up to, go to my blog at don'tletitgo.com and subscribe to the blog, because at every post I put at the blog, you will get an email. And that's probably the best.
My shows, you can go to my website. Oh, if you're subscribed to Patreon, you'll get a newsletter. But part of it is that my shows are somewhat you know, the schedule is ill-defined because it depends on my traveling, it depends on my availability, it depends on my energy level, it depends on a lot of things. I try to do as many shows as I can, but I don't want to promise that many and then have to cancel them. So I'd rather, I'm telling you now, there'll be a show tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern time. There will be a show next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern time with Amy. There will probably be a show on Friday, maybe 7 p.m. Eastern time, maybe a little later. Maybe a little, well, I don't know. So maybe it'll be, yeah, around 7 p.m. Eastern time, maybe different time. I'm not sure. And then next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, there might be shows as well because I'm home and I'd like to do as many shows as I can. After that, I don't know because of my travel schedule. So it's the best I can give you.
Keep in mind, Yaron, if you're traveling and you would want to do a show, but maybe you need someone to put together program notes and stuff, we could do a show on those other weeks at a different time, maybe the one that fits with the European schedule, because I could do it earlier in a day. Okay?
Sounds good.
So,
all right, everybody, have a great evening. And I'm going to go watch Mr. Maniso. And have a good evening, Amy, and talk to you all really, really soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye.